So how is Thomas Reid in an inquiry into the human mind on the principles of common sense, using the edition edited by Derek Brooks here, how is Reid going to find the mistakes that led modern philosophers into the inevitability of Humean skepticism and make it not inevitable by not making those mistakes? Well, you might not expect, in fact, I'm quite sure you will not expect how he's going to do it, at least initially. He's going to do it by talking about the nose at first. The book has this introductory chapter, and later there's a conclusion. And in between, he talks about smelling, tasting, hearing, touch, and sight. So chapter 2 of the book is about smelling. He's going to talk about the sensation of smell. Now, this does not mean that he's going to give a very detailed look at how the nose works and how smelling works and how odors work and just stop there. No, he's also going to use this to articulate and illustrate principles of common sense philosophy. Principles according to which we can indeed perceive the world. The common sense principle that we can perceive the world is what Descartes, Malebranche, Locke, and then Berkeley and Hume and their skepticism. That's the principle they were doubting. Reid is trying to defend this principle, in part by explaining it properly, and doing so with illustrations from the five senses. So it is so difficult, he says, starting the chapter, to unravel the operations of the human understanding and to reduce them to their first principles, that we cannot expect to succeed in the attempt but by beginning with the simplest and proceeding by very cautious steps to the more complex. The five external senses, taste, sight, smell, hearing, touch, may, for this reason, claim to be first considered in an analysis of the human faculties. We're starting with the simplest to avoid confusion. The simplest place to start is the sense of smell. The same reason ought to determine us to make a choice even among the senses and to give the precedence not to the noblest or most useful, but to the simplest, and that whose objects are least in danger of being mistaken for other things. So I guess I got ahead of myself slightly and skipped a point. The point I skipped was, starting with the senses to explain common sense philosophy is the simplest way to start. And we might as well start with the simplest of the senses, which is smell. Sight is going to occupy the sixth chapter, and it's going to be a lot more pages than the others, because it's the least simple. So we are not by any means going to go into any detail on his account of smell. Here's a short one-sentence summary of some of it. I scribbled in the marginalia. We smell by means of particles emitted from things, the reception transmitted by nerves. Let's go to section 2 of chapter 2. Suppose a person who had never had this sense before, who had never been able to smell before, to receive it all at once and to smell a rose. Can he perceive any similitude or agreement between the smell and the rose? Or indeed between it and any other object whatsoever? Certainly he cannot. He finds himself affected in a new way. He knows not why or from what cause, like a man that feels some pain or pleasure formerly unknown to him. He is conscious that he is not the cause of it himself, but cannot, from the nature of the thing, determine whether it is caused by body or spirit, by something near, or by something at a distance. It has no similitude to anything else, so as to admit of a comparison, and therefore he can conclude nothing from it except, unless perhaps, that there must be some unknown cause of it. It is evidently ridiculous to ascribe to it figure, color, extension, or any other quality of bodies. He cannot give it a place any more than he can give a place to melancholy or joy, nor can he conceive it to have any existence but when it is smelled, so that it appears to be a simple and original affection or feeling of the mind, altogether inexplicable and unaccountable. It is indeed impossible that it can be in any body. It is a sensation, and a sensation can only be an sentient thing. So, sounds like he's talking about reality being subjective, or reality being mental or ideal, in that technical term used in metaphysics sometimes. Reality being a mental thing. But no, he's talking about sensation being a mental thing. This is a crucial distinction one finds in Reid. The modern philosophers, like Descartes and Locke and Berkeley, did one thing very right, maybe many things, but they did this one thing I'm about to try to explain very right. They realized that there's such a thing as what they like to call secondary qualities. That I don't have a great example. Oh, tea is a great example. they realized that there's the actual thing in the world, and then there's the sensation of it. So here's a nice iron Buddha tea box, and I can smell the tea, and it smells great. But the sensation of what that tea smells like is not the same thing as the actual tea. The actual tea is in these tea bags, and the wonderful smell of it is totally different from the actual tea. Here's a tea bag occupying time and space and taking up this much space and having this consistency and this weight and this color and all these things. But none of those things are the same thing as a smell. Imagine someone who's never had smell before, suddenly being gifted with the power of smell, having to smell a rose, Reid suggests, and what could possibly inform him that the sensation he's experiencing is connected to this particular object in the world. There's no way of connecting the sensation to the object, if that's all he knows. Because the sensation really is only in the mind, and it doesn't actually have much of a resemblance to the thing in the world. The sensation of a smell, as such, cannot exist save as perceived. It is inconceivable that it would exist in any physical thing. That's a Reidian point. And that's something those modern philosophers got right. Their mistake was thinking that all we can perceive is what we perceive directly. So Reid, in a nutshell, has this philosophy of perception, this articulation of common sense philosophy. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I think it should be fine. This is a lot of Reid, not everything. This is a lot of Reid in a nutshell. We, human beings, perceive the world. A human being can actually perceive a rose by smelling it. I can perceive the tea by touching, by smelling the tea bags. But we perceive by means of sensations, and the sensations themselves are mental things. They're not physical things. We perceive physical things existing outside the world by means of sensations that are mental things. What we perceive indirectly. These early modern philosophers made the mistake of thinking that what we perceive, we must perceive directly. And so, of course, they were led to skepticism once they realized that all we perceive directly is sensations that don't actually resemble the things out there in the world. Okay, skipping a bit now to section 3. Section 3 of chapter 2. I could as easily doubt my own existence as of the existence of my sensations. Even those profound philosophers who have endeavored to disprove their own existence have yet left their sensations to stand upon their own bottom, stripped of a subject, rather than call in question the reality of their existence. We cannot doubt our sensations. What we perceive, we really do perceive. Now, this is a good start. We may need a whole lot more. Let's look at one more passage from chapter 2 and then wrap up this particular video. At the end of section 5 of chapter 2, and in this edition, we are on page 32. We read, I conclude further that it is no less a part of the human constitution to believe the present existence of our sensations, and to believe the past existence of what we remember, than it is to believe that twice two make four. The evidence of sense, the evidence of memory, and the evidence of the necessary relations of things are all distinct and original kinds of evidence equally grounded on our constitution. None of them depends upon or can be resolved into another. To reason against any of these kinds of evidence is absurd. Nay, to reason for them is absurd. They are first principles, and such fall not within the province of reason, but of common sense. Reason needs a place to start. Logic doesn't do any good unless you have some premises. Reason is about figuring things out from things we know, which means reason needs a place to start. Where does it start? It starts with common sense. What are the things he mentions here? They're instances of common sense. Mathematics, twice two make four. The present existence of our sensations, the past existence of what we remember, the evidence of sense, the evidence of memory, the evidence of the necessary relations of things. Okay, so memory perception or sensation, memory, sensation, and knowledge of mathematical truths. These are all common sense principles, and to reason against any of these kinds of evidence is absurd. Nay, to reason for them is absurd. They are first principles. Such fall not within the province of reason, but of common sense. Common sense is those first principles from which we get all our other knowledge. And these are those principles, those first principles, that pretty much everyone knows. And even a philosopher like Descartes, who doubts certain principles of common sense, and who tries to establish them, does so by assuming principles of common sense. In particular, I exist. Plus, if you're familiar with what they call the Cartesian circle, you may be aware that the reliability of reason also has to work if you're going to make Descartes work. Otherwise, Descartes' just reasoning in a circle. And actually, he does. But you could take a modified Cartesian method, and if his argument for the existence of God works, then on two common sense principles, the reliability of reason plus the existence of myself, you could possibly hope to establish other common sense principles. But you have to depend on even one that Descartes knows, and two that he should have known, but he made a mistake. Anyway, I'm not supposed to be getting distracted by Descartes. Okay, so our belief in the faculties of sensation, our trust in the faculties of sensation and memory, is a natural instinct, along with mathematics. We believe our senses, and we believe in the world of the past as instinctively as we believe that 2 + 2 = 4. Now, this is a chapter on smell. It's a chapter on the sense of smell. It's a philosopher writing about noses. But it is an occasion to explain a whole philosophy of perception and a whole epistemology, and that's what Reid is doing. And we'll see more of what he does in the next video. Thanks for watching.